Great way to kick it off this morning. You know, I was wondering as I was listening to all the young people blow off great big firecrackers last night, if they had any idea what they were even doing it for. This is the weekend that we are celebrating independence of this country. Back in 1776, when we adopted the Declaration of Independence. What a wonderful thing when anybody, in this case, the people who left the British Empire and said, from now on, these 13 colonies are not part of this British Empire, but we are going to be now henceforth called the United States of America. Anytime a group says, we are going to have the courage to break apart from whatever that status quo is and do something new and different, it gets my praise, it gets my honor, because it takes a lot of guts to do something like that. So it's really worth celebrating. For me, it's not just about a blessing America, it's about blessing all of this whole entire planet. And at the same time, I very much honor what I just said. The fact that this group of people saw a greater vision for how life and liberty and government could be. So I honor that. The two key words today are freedom, which I lit my candle for, and independence. Freedom and independence is what this weekend is all about. And those words are really synonymous. When I looked up in the dictionary, the word independence had the word freedom in it. This is what it said. Independence said freedom from outside control or support. We're going to come back to the support part later, because you know I couldn't leave that alone. So freedom from outside control or support. We'll just say freedom from outside control. We'll come back to the support later. And then freedom said the absence of coercion or constraint in choice and action. All right, that's what this country is built on. Sometimes we're better at it than others, but we're built on that idea of freedom and independence, and that we don't have to be outside somebody or inside somebody else's outside control. Now I know we can all fill in the blanks, sometimes it's kind of gone astray, but it's still a wonderful vision to hold. Personally, I'm not as interested in it in terms of the legal or the constitutional or the political aspects of it. There's plenty of people who that's their thing, and I'm grateful for it. So for me, I'm going to go into my area of interest, which is the idea of spiritual freedom, as opposed to the political ones. We'll just leave those alone. You can do with it what you want. We're celebrating the independence of it, and yet I want to move us into celebrating independence and freedom for ourselves. So that's what the spiritual freedom is. For me, this is distinctly different from the idea of religious freedom. Our country already has religious freedom. Although there are times that people try to make that not so, it is so. We have religious freedom. And that's not what I'm speaking of. I'm talking about pure spiritual freedom. Ernest Holmes said this quote. He said, freedom already exists, but your freedom is in your own thought. Freedom already exists, but your freedom is in your own thought. It means to me that I'm able to and I get to think and choose what my life will be. I get to think for myself. I'm able to and I get to think for myself what I will have, what I will be, what I will do, how I feel, and how I think is up to me. Freedom already exists. We can say it's God-given. Because God would not give us this life and then keep us in bondage. We've already been given that freedom, and we are the ones who have to recognize it. We have to recognize that we live in a storehouse, as Ernest Holmes calls it, of infinite possibilities. For me, it's like this. When I start to look at my life like this with blinders on, I start to forget once in a while that I belong to this infinite storehouse of possibilities. And it requires me, and sometimes you, all of us, to go, oh yes, there are more possibilities than I've been looking at here. And sometimes it's just that simple. Asking ourselves, what else is possible? What else am I free to think? What else am I free to do? What else am I free to have? But I am the one who have to remember to take myself out of the limited, narrow confines. As much as we all like to think of ourselves as these great evolved beings, because don't you? Aren't you a great evolved being? Sometimes. Sometimes. Thank you. So that's, you know, I think of myself as this great, amazing, evolved being, and then every once in a while I hear somebody else talking a different perspective, and I go, oh, I see how narrow I've been thinking about that. That's what I'm getting at by this. Listen to somebody else's perspective. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but that, just one little shift. Oh, yes, I have been thinking about it exactly the way my parents taught me. Or, yes, I have been thinking about it only from an American perspective or a particular religious perspective. To remind ourselves to open our eyes and say, there's this infinite storehouse of possibilities. And lift our eyes above even the tangible somebody else or something else to the thing we can't even see. What possibilities are available to me in the spiritual realm that I might not even be paying attention to? Because let's face it, paying attention to that thing that we can't see requires practice. It requires reminding ourselves to do so. We're so busy looking for our answers with the tangible that we have to say what else is possible in the realm of the spiritual and invite it to come in, make it welcome to come in. So that freedom and independence, again, is simply I get to choose what I shall think, what I shall feel, what I shall have, what I shall do. It doesn't mean I get to control everything, so don't get me wrong. We don't get to control everything, and neither do you. Darn it. I know we want to. We want to control everything. In foundational class, one of the biggest questions that I get is, okay, I'm learning that I can choose my life. How do I get her to recognize it? How do I get him to do X, Y, Z? Well, you don't. We don't get to control everything. So we're not talking about control when I say I get to choose what I want. I'm not talking about controlling you. If we could do that, well, sometimes it might work out, but oh my gosh, the chaos that would ensue, we wouldn't want it anyway. So just put that idea, we're not talking about controlling. But if somebody like Viktor Frankl can choose his thoughts and choose his meaning and his dignity while in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, my God, we can do it. That, for me, shifts my perspective. Does everybody know who Viktor Frankl is? Okay, good. If you don't, just in case, he was a Holocaust survivor. And he went through that horrendous ordeal. But something inside of him made meaning out of it. And he came to write all kinds of books. He was a famous psychologist. He was in the middle of what most people would call hell. Being controlled on the outside by other people who chose to enslave him and millions of others like him. But he knew that he could choose his thinking. If he can do it, and anybody who's in an imprisoned type situation, if they can do it, we can do it. Those of us who are roaming around freely, we can do it. That's what I mean. We have the power of freedom and independence within ourselves to choose, no matter what is going around us in the world of effects, how am I going to respond to it? How am I going to think about it? That means that we don't get to blame other people. Yeah, we try, but it doesn't really work. Instead, it's more empowering to say, what do I choose? Now, Ernest Holmes, our founder, had a lot of things to say about freedom, a whole lot of things to say about freedom. And so I actually chose 3 of them to weave together for you. And I start with this one. He says, the meaning of freedom implies the possibility of suffering. Okay, because a lot of people go, well, if I'm free, then my life should just be great. The meaning of freedom implies the possibility of suffering, because if we are free only by virtue of the possibility of choosing more than one course of action as an experience. So we can choose suffering. We can choose to make a complete mess out of our lives if we want to. Let's just be aware that it's a choice we get to have. If there was only one possibility, it wouldn't be freedom, he's saying here. The possibility of suffering, because if we are free only by virtue of the possibility of choosing more than one option. This world of effects that we live in, the world of illusion, the world of effects, the world of form, everything that we see, does its best to pull us into some sort of conformity, to pull us into some sort of box of, here's what you should value, here's what you should think, here's what you should want. Religious institutions do it. They tell you what should be important to you. Our TV commercials tell you what should be valuable to you, what you should want. Our